What's up, everybody? It's T and Dustin here to review Sully for you guys, because we just saw it and we got some things to say.
That's right. We do have things to say. Sorry. I wanted to chime in and then it was awkward.
Too soon.
It was awkward.
So this is the first time Dustin is joining us for a review here on CineFix, so be nice to him in the comments. Just kidding, you won't be.
Oh.
So Sully is, of course, the biopic, so to speak, or really it's focusing on the single event, The Miracle on the Hudson. It's directed by Clint Eastwood. Now, this is a relatively recent event. I mean, I remember it fairly clearly. I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah.
And it was when there was a forced water landing, is what we call it, or what they call it in the movie anyway, of the U.S. Airways flight on the Hudson River in New York after a bird strike, which is basically when a bunch of geese came into contact with the plane's engines and they lost all thrust whatsoever. So Dustin, what was your initial impression of this movie? Because I know you're really excited to see it.
Yeah, I mentioned on one of our roundtables here too that I was very interested in this movie. So I liked it overall. You know, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't as good as some of, I think, Clint Eastwood's past movies, but overall, I would say my impression is that I did enjoy it.
So you would tell people to go ahead and see it?
I think so, yeah, especially if you, like most people, are familiar with the incident. It's a great, dramatization of it.
Personally, I wasn't super excited to see this movie. I was more sort of curious as to why they were making a movie about it. Maybe it was just because it was so soon and it seemed like a bit of a short time span to already be making a movie about this event. And I also thought that because we have this event so recent in our minds and we know what happens, we know that everyone survives, I felt like it was sort of going into a movie where it's just like, well, are there going to be real stakes here? Because we kind of know what happens already. And to that extent, I do feel like the movie struggled to kind of manufacture stakes within itself. I think they kind of crowbarred in antagonists and sort of situations that may not have necessarily been true to life. What they did do a great job with was creating tension when they recreated the actual forced water landing. I don't want to say crash because that's not really what it was considered. It actually, ironically, even though it was a successful landing where everyone survived, it makes me never want to fly again because it really is a terrifying sequence to watch.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have been wondering, can you even make an entire movie out of such a short event? Because that was kind of the whole point. It was so fast. It happened. They landed in the river, and I thought it did a pretty good job at really examining not just the lead up to the event, and then that's the finale of the movie in a way. It's like, well, okay, this is a thing that we know happened. We know what the outcome was. So let's examine what happened afterwards with the NTSB and kind of the turmoil that Sully went through. And I remember even at the time, part of what was so admirable about him was that he was always saying, I'm not a hero, I did my job, I trained for this. So it was really great to see that portrayal and really see kind of what it was like for him personally to go through this event.
Yeah, I do think that Tom Hanks, he's freaking Tom Hanks. Of course he does a great job playing Sully, and you kind of forget that he's Tom Hanks after a point. I feel like the performances were lacking a little bit in some of the more minor roles because this is, they're trying to build out a movie around a relatively brief event. They do try to kind of build out subplots with some of the passengers on the plane, which I actually applaud in theory. I think it's a good idea to not just have them be glorified extras. They're not just nameless, faceless passengers. They're still nameless though. But in any event, we do kind of get a couple passengers where we're sort of tracking them throughout the actual forced water landing. But I feel like some of those performances, I was just like, who did this casting? This is really not great acting. But nonetheless, this is Tom Hanks' movie and he does a great job carrying it as he always does. I think the main struggle was with building a movie around the actual event itself, building a movie around the event of the forced water landing, because when I was looking at the trailers, I was thinking, oh, so this is sort of like Flight, but about a real event where, we've got this crazy plane landing and now the pilot in question is being sort of involved in this very heavy investigation about whether he did the right thing or not. And I think with this one, it was challenging because of course he did what was right because everyone survived. Is there really a discussion here? And I know that there has to be an investigation afterward because insurance companies have their own protocols and if you basically destroy an aircraft, there's going to be an investigation. I just don't know that the way that they constructed it in the film was super believable to me because in the end, it's sort of like they go from being, oh, you were a cowboy, you could have landed at Teterboro, you could have landed back at LaGuardia. And it's just like, well, I think he would have done that if he could have done that. How is this even a discussion? And in the end, they're like, you really are a hero. So I feel like it was just a bit silly in that way.
Well, I'd be curious to know too, how factual some of that was.
Yeah.
Because it was probably heightened for the movie and to heighten the drama, but yeah, we kind of wondered, like, did they really try and vilify him so
Right.
much? Or is there some truth to that? Or is that
Yeah.
purely just made up for
Is
the
that
movie?
just Hollywood?
We did have some interesting thoughts on the ending.
Yeah,
Obviously,
I
there's no
thought the
spoiler here. We
ending-
know how the event ends, but the ending of the
Right.
movie was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into specifics on like what exactly happens because they still do take their own creative license and stuff because it is a movie. But the actual tone of the ending of the movie struck me as very peculiar. Gran Torino, one of Clint Eastwood's other more recent movies that I really like. I really love that movie. I also thought that had a somewhat weird ending where he's like singing that song over the credits at the end. Yes. And I feel like that was like an abrupt change of tone at the very end. This movie has a similar thing going to me.
It was like just kind
Like
of
the-
all right, and the movie's over.
Yeah,
Oh,
the abrupt
credits.
shift in tone, it was almost like they may as well have ended the movie in a pillow fight. So outside of the sequences with the forced water landing, I feel like they were kind of spinning their wheels and didn't really know what to do a lot. Like it's a lot of Tom Hanks being sad, Tom Hanks looking out of windows, Tom Hanks on the phone with his wife. The rest of the movie felt like it was like a Hallmark movie or something. Like just in terms of the quality of the filmmaking to me, it just didn't feel weighty enough to be like this big budget picture. It seems like they spent all their money on that sequence of the forced water landing and not on actually like constructing a great story and scenes around it.
And the overall structure to it was like not quite linear, which at first I wasn't crazy about, and I thought, I kind of for this story I would have rather just see it play out. But as they did kind of jump around in time and revisit different angles of things, I thought it worked because. The whole point is that this was an event that was under such scrutiny,
Right.
and that they're going over the tapes and things. So I'm like, oh, it's kind of cool. Like in a way, we're also as an audience getting to examine it from different angles and stuff, and I like that.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of problematic issues in this movie, but if you see it for one reason, I would say just see it for the recreation of the actual event, the actual water landing that they had to do with that US Airways flight, because that is done phenomenally. All right, you guys, that's it for this one. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to CineFix, and make sure you check us out on our social media, because we're doing all sorts of cool stuff like live Facebook telecasts. It's probably not called a telecast. I'm old. I'm gonna get out of here. See you guys next time.
Don't change that dial.
Yeah. I think that's the sound he made when he was doing that water landing.